Hello and welcome to part 2 of the LScript tutorial. So if you've made it this far, you're a programmer, congratulations. So in this episode, we're learning how to create a panel or an interface for our plugin, right? So if you remember very well, if you watched the previous video, you know that with LScript Commander, this is how we get our commands from here. So we already know the command for adding a no object. So now what we want to do is to create a no, but we want to be able to type in, or the user to be able to type in a new name for the no. This way we're going to learn how to get the user input and actually use it in our script. Okay, so in order to do that, let's go to where it says items and click on no, and okay, so that we see the command is add no, right? So instead here, let me right click and bring it here. And if I right click, if I go to session and convert to LScript, it's going to show me how this would work as a script. So let me copy this text since we've already been privileged to have this text, and let me clear the session. And I don't need LScript Commander anymore. Close that. I don't need the no. Close the no. So let me open a text editor. I'm using Sublime Text. You can use the free version, or you can use whatever text editor you have, even Notepad. So let me paste that. Now, as I said earlier, warnings is there to remove all the warnings that come up. So we'll leave it there. And then there's generic, which is a required function in order for a plugin to work. So there's the function, which runs immediately. You run this thing, and then there's add no, and with the name no. So let's change the name in here to something like my no, right? So let's save this as a script, so we can replace the first script that we made, or you can create a new one, that's fine. Okay, so if we run this, if we go back to layout, all you need to do is go to utilities tab and then additional, and go to your script. If you haven't added it, just click add plugins, add the plugin, and then go to additional and find the name, which is first script in our case, and click, oh, I shot over it, first script, yeah. And we have our no. So the no is created immediately, right? But this is not what we want. We want an interface so that the user can interact and give the no a specific name that we want, instead of just running it as it is. So let's add some code up here before we get to this point, right? So at this point, what we need is to bring up the panel. Now the panel is called a requester. So to get the requester, we type rec, shortcut for requester, begin, requester begin, rec begin. And this, just like this add no has open and close bracket, we also do the same thing here because it's a function, and at the end we add a semicolon. Always we add a semicolon at the end of all lines, right? So requester begin, immediately layout sees this, it knows, oh, you need a requester, so it's going to generate one for you, but it needs one thing from you. It needs to know what title you want on the requester. So you do the same that you've done in here, where you put inverted commas. We use inverted commas every time we are typing some text. For as long as it's not a name of something, it's not a function, it's just plain text, it's not a number, you have to add inverted commas like this, as if it's quotation marks, like what somebody said. So let's copy this into there, but change the title. This is the title of our requester. So let's say my first script, something like that. You can put anything you want in there. So now it knows that you want a requester. But in order for the requester to show, we go down here, we say rec post. We do the same open, close bracket, semicolon. But this post doesn't require any input in here because all it does is just post or show you the requester that you've created. So if we're going to add any buttons, any text inputs, they're all going to happen in between this point and this point. Right in between here, we add all our controls, okay? And also, if you add two slashes like that at at the beginning of any line, this is considered a comment now. So the script will run, and then when it gets here, it's going to ignore this line. So if you have a line that you want ignored, you do that. So in this case, I want this ignored because I don't want this to run. But before we ignore it, let me remove that and let's run this and see what happens. So let me go back here. I don't need to add the plugin again. I just go to additional and click on it. And now we don't see the no, we see a requester. Now it's a little bit small, so we will see how we can enlarge it. But though, if you don't want to do that, it can enlarge automatically as you add controls, but there's also a possibility of enlarging it yourself. So in this case, no matter what we press cancel or OK. Let's press cancel, we still get the no. And if we go back and press OK, we still get the no. Why is this? It's because immediately we run the requester, it's posted, whether the script pauses here for a second until the user will press either OK or cancel. So regardless what the user presses here, there's no instructions on what to do when the user presses either of those. So what it does is it just forges ahead and runs whatever code is after this. Okay, now in order to do that, the command to exit a function is return with a semicolon at the end. So when we say return, it means every time it gets here, it's going to exit this function. So this code down here will never run. So let's test that for a second. First script. So let's press OK. You see, no. Let's press cancel. Same thing, right? Because now we are exiting the script right there. Now, in order for us to exit only when the cancel button is pressed, we need to give it a condition of if. Now, don't worry about the if statement. Just write it as I'm going to write it now. You will learn how it works later. So we're going to say return if, and then we put an exclamation mark, return if not Rick post. So this exclamation mark means not, or the opposite. So here we're saying if this does not happen, return. Okay, so let's see what this effect has. So we're going to run the script again. So if we say cancel, nothing happens. Okay, something happens, right? So this is how you tell the script to exit on a cancel. So you will learn how this works later. So don't mind, just type it as it is. Now, if you've noticed, we don't have any text input on our requester. So first of all, let's change the requester size. Let's go and say Rick size, open and close bracket, like that. Now in here, this requires two things. It requires a width and a height. So we want 300 pixels like that, comma 100 pixels. So what I'm saying is change the requester size to 300 pixel wide, 100 pixels height. So let's see what that happens. What happens with that? Let me run it again. And as you can see, we get something more reasonable now. So let's cancel. Come back here. Okay, so now let's add an actual control. Now, in order to add a control, we want to add something for a user to input a string. So the control for that is conveniently called string. But every control starts with CTL. So that's short for control. CTL string, like that. And it's a function as well, so open and close bracket. Okay. So right now what we're saying is create a control of type string. Now this requires two things. You need to tell it what the label is, just like we've told this one what the title is. So we need to tell it what the label is. So let's do that with open inverted commas. Let's say enter no name. So this is instruction for the user on what they're supposed to enter in this control. And then, because this is a text box, so let's put a comma. We need also the default value. So here, because we want the default value to be empty, we're going to just put 2 quotation marks. But if we put some text in there, that will be the value the user sees immediately they open the requester. So let's put something like some no, just to see what happens. So let me save this. That's all we need. And let's go back, click. And as you can see, now we have a text box with a default value of some no inside. Now, we are not telling it to use any of this, so if we press OK, the no will come, but it's going to have the name my no and not what we had typed in there. So we need to tell it to use that value of this string control. Now, in order for us to do that, we need to give this string control a name so that we can tell ElseScript, we can refer to it and say we're talking about this string right there. So let's give it a name. Everything needs a name if you're going to refer to it. So the name can be any text, just don't put any spaces and don't start with a number. So let's just say my string, that's what I'm going to call it, as one word, and then say equal to, and that's it. So I've given it a name. So my string is equal to this control. So this control is my string. If I call my string, I'm talking about this control. Okay, so let's replace whatever is in here in the add no with my string. Now notice we don't put the comma, the inverted commas, because this is not a sentence, it's a name of something. So if it's a name of something or it's a number, we don't put those quotes. Now remember that this my string is representing the control itself and not the value within it, but the actual control. So in order for us to tell us that we just want the value, all we do is put a dot at the end and type value. So this means the value of my string being this string control. So I hope this is making sense. This is just a property of this. We could say dot color, it means we are talking about the color. Dot width, then we're talking about the width, or dot height, then we're talking about the height of that control. But in this case, what we want is the value. That's why we're saying we need dot value. So let's recap a little bit. Requester begins here with this title. We change the requester size to this resolution. We create a string control called myString with a default value of some no, but let me just remove that default value so that it's empty. I can put 2 double quotes like that, so it will be empty. And then we're telling it return if the user clicks cancel. But if the user clicks OK, we continue down the road and add a no. Now the value of the no will be the value of whatever is in my string, which is this control. Simple and straightforward, right? So let's test our new script. Let me go additional, first script, and there we are. So let's type some name. First of all, let's try the cancel button, make sure that nothing happens. Okay, we are good to go. Click, and then let's type a name. Let's say this is a no. This is a name of a no that we want to create, so enter and press OK. And there we go. If you check, the no's name is this is a no. Exactly what we typed there. So we can do this again and create another no, some other no. Hit OK. OK. And we have a second no here. So we have 2 no's here. This is a no and some other no. So that's how it is. That's how we create an interface in order for the user to interact with our script. So this is only the beginning. On the next video, we're going to see how to add different types of controls and how to use their value. Now, of course, if you want to add more controls on this one, you can simply duplicate this same line several times. Just give it different names. Let's say myString1, myString2, myString3, or just give it different names that are more descriptive of what you want the user to type in there. Then you can put different labels here. So maybe here you enter the no's name, another no's name there, another one. So we can have several of these, and then we can replicate this add no several times as well and add the value of a different string here. Let's say this one is 1, this one is 2, and this one is 3, something like that. So this is very valid. You can do something like this, and then 4 no's will be created at once, each one with a different value from a different string input. So let's try and see if this would work. So as you can see, now I've got several of these, but because I limited the size of the requester, it's not fitting anymore. So I have to enlarge the size of the requester, or I can simply put 2 slashes here to comment out this line so it doesn't run anymore. So if this, I don't tell it the size, it will add an automatic size to the requester. So let me see that. Okay, so there is an automatic size, and in here I can say no A, then let me just copy this, no B, no C, and no D, and then hit OK. So now as you can see, I've created 4 of these no objects with each name in that string input. Alright, so that's all for this episode. I hope it wasn't too boring or too long. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, or support me on Patreon, and I will see you in the next lesson.